The thunderous crack of gunfire echoed through the streets of Red Bluff, Texas, as Gabriel Tucker ducked behind an overturned wagon, his heart pounding against his ribs like a wild Mustang. The year was 1878, and for the third time that month, he'd found himself caught in the crossfire between lawmen and outlaws. As bullets splintered the wood around him, Gabe touched the jagged scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, a permanent reminder of the life he'd chosen, or perhaps the life that had chosen him. "You picked the wrong day to visit town, Tucker," Sheriff Mills bellowed from across the street. Gabe didn't bother answering. The sheriff wasn't wrong. 6 years of bounty hunting had earned him enough scars to tell 100 stories and enough enemies to fill a graveyard. At 32, his body bore the marks of knife fights, bullet wounds, and one particularly nasty encounter with a bear in the Colorado mountains. Each scar was a chapter in his life, written in flesh and sealed with blood. When the gunfire finally ceased, Gabe stood cautiously, dusting the dirt from his worn leather coat. 3 bodies lay motionless in the street, none of his concern. He adjusted his hat and continued toward his destination, Magenti's Saloon. His throat was dry as desert sand, and after riding for 2 days straight, he needed whiskey more than he needed air. The saloon doors swung open with a familiar creak as Gabe stepped inside. The piano player barely paused as heads turned to assess the newcomer. Most quickly returned to their drinks, recognizing trouble when they saw it walking. Gabe's reputation had a way of preceding him across the Western territories. He approached the bar with measured steps, his spurs jingling softly against the wooden floor. That's when he saw her. Standing behind the counter, wiping a glass with a cloth that had seen better days. Her auburn hair was pulled back loosely, with tendrils framing a face that stopped his heart cold. But it was her eyes that truly captured him, deep green with flecks of gold that caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. In that moment, as their gazes locked across the smoky room, every scar on Gabriel Tucker's body suddenly made perfect sense. Every wound, every fight, every painful memory had been leading him here to this place, to her. "What can I get you, stranger?" she asked, her voice melodic yet strong, carrying a hint of something Gabe couldn't quite place, refinement, perhaps, that seemed out of place in a frontier saloon. "Whiskey," he managed, his own voice rougher than intended. "And your name if you're willing to share it." A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. "Whiskey I can provide. Names cost extra in Red Bluff." Gabe placed a silver dollar on the counter. "Will this cover it?" She pocketed the coin with practiced ease. "Victoria Hayes, most call me Tory, Gabriel Tucker." He tipped his hat slightly. "Most wish they didn't know me at all." Victoria poured his drink, studying him with a gaze that felt like it could see through his weathered exterior to something he'd thought long buried. "You're the bounty hunter. I've heard stories." "Most aren't true," Gabe said, downing the whiskey in one burning gulp. "And the ones that are, probably worse than whatever you've heard." Victoria nodded, taking his glass for a refill without being asked. "We all have stories, Mr. Tucker. Some are just written more visibly than others." Her fingers brushed his as she returned the glass, and Gabe felt a jolt that had nothing to do with the whiskey. He noticed a thin, pale scar across the back of her hand, delicate compared to his own collection, but telling nonetheless. Before he could comment, a commotion broke out at a card table behind him. "You cheating son of a bitch." A heavyset man with a prospector's beard stood abruptly, sending chips scattering across the table. His opponent, younger, leaner, with the quick eyes of someone used to trouble, had already pushed his chair back. "You're just a poor loser, Wallace." Gabe didn't turn, but he watched Victoria's expression change, concern replacing the warmth that had been there moments before. "Not again," she murmured. The first punch was thrown with predictable inevitability. By the second, tables were overturning. By the third, Gabe had finished his whiskey and set the glass down with deliberate calm. "Stay out of it," Victoria warned, but there was something in her voice that told him she didn't expect to be heated. Gabe turned slowly. "Sorry, madam, but staying out of things has never been my strong suit." He moved with the fluid grace of a man who had spent years navigating violence. Catching the younger card player's arm mid-swing, Gabe twisted it behind his back while simultaneously stepping aside to avoid the prospector's wild lunge. "That's enough," Gabe said, his voice carrying a quiet authority that cut through the chaos. "Take your disagreement outside or settle it like gentlemen. The lady doesn't need her establishment destroyed." The prospector spat on the floor. "This ain't no lady's establishment, it's Maginty's." "Maginty's dead," Victoria called from behind the bar, a shotgun now resting casually in her hands. "Has been for 6 months. I own this place now, and Mr. Tucker is right. Take it outside or settle down." The way she handled the shotgun told Gabe she knew how to use it. The prospector and card player seemed to recognize this too, slowly backing down with muttered curses. As the saloon returned to its previous state of controlled disorder, Gabe made his way back to the bar. "I could have handled that," Victoria said, though there was gratitude in her eyes. "Never doubted it for a second." Gabe nodded toward the shotgun. "You handle that like you've had practice. A woman alone in Red Bluff needs to know how to protect what's hers." She set the shotgun back beneath the counter. "What brings you to our little corner of Texas, Mr. Tucker?" "You don't strike me as a man who travels without purpose." Gabe hesitated, then reached inside his coat, producing a worn wanted poster. He unfolded it carefully, revealing the sketch of a man with cold eyes and a distinctive scar across his nose. "Jacob Farrow," he said. "Word is he's been seen in these parts." Victoria's face remained carefully neutral, but Gabe caught the slight tensing of her shoulders. "There are a lot of men passing through Red Bluff these days. The railroad's bringing all sorts." "Farrow isn't all sorts. He's wanted in 4 territories. Murder, robbery, worse things I won't mention in mixed company." Gabe studied her face. "You've seen him." It wasn't a question, but Victoria answered anyway. "Maybe. A man matching that description was here 3 nights ago, didn't stay long, said he was heading to Fort Worth." "And you believed him?" "I believe everyone until they give me reason not to, Mr. Tucker." She poured him another drink without being asked. "Even bounty hunters with eyes that have seen too much." Gabe accepted the drink, noticing she'd poured one for herself as well. "And what do my eyes tell you, Miss Hayes? That you're hunting something more than just wanted men." She raised her glass slightly. "To finding whatever it is you're looking for." They drank in silence, the weight of unasked questions hanging between them. For the first time in years, Gabriel Tucker felt seen, truly seen, and it unsettled him more than any gunfight ever had. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Gabe remained at the bar, watching Victoria move through her domain with natural authority. She handled drunken cowboys with firm words, rewarded generous tippers with genuine smiles, and managed the piano player's breaks with the precision of a military commander. When the evening crowd began to thin, Victoria approached him again. "You planning to sleep at that bar stool, Mr. Tucker?" "Hadn't given much thought to sleeping arrangements," Gabe admitted. It was a lie. He'd been considering his options since arriving, but none had seemed as appealing as staying precisely where he was. "There's a boarding house down the street. Mrs. Wilkins runs a clean place." Victoria wiped down the counter methodically, though she might not appreciate a man of your profession darkening her doorstep. My profession tends to make finding accommodations challenging, Gabe agreed. Victoria seemed to make a decision. I have a room upstairs. It's small, but it's clean. $5 a night includes breakfast. Sounds steep for a small room in Red Bluff. She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen all evening. It includes the guarantee that I won't shoot you for being a bounty hunter. That's worth at least $3 right there. Gabe found himself returning her smile. When you put it that way, it's a bargain. After the last patron had stumbled out into the night, Victoria locked the front doors and led Gabe up a narrow staircase. The upper floor held a small hallway with 4 doors. "That's my room," she said, pointing to the door at the end. "You'll be here." She opened the second door, revealing a modest but clean room with a single bed, washstand, and chair. "It'll do fine," Gabe said, stepping inside. "Thank you." Victoria lingered in the doorway. "There's something you should know about Pharaoh." Gabe turned to face her, instantly alert. "What about him?" "He's not just passing through. He has business here in Red Bluff." Her hand unconsciously went to her throat, where Gabe noticed another scar, thin and precise, partially hidden by her collar. "Dangerous business." "What kind of business?" "The kind that involves payback." Victoria's eyes hardened. 3 years ago, I testified against him in Austin. He was robbing banks with his brother, and I was working as a teller. I saw him kill a guard. My testimony put him away, but his brother went free for lack of evidence. "And now Pharaoh's out," Gabe concluded, the pieces falling into place. "He's come looking for you." Victoria nodded. "He escaped 6 months ago. I bought this place from McGinty's widow with my savings, changed my name, thought I could disappear. But he found me anyway." "That's why you're really letting me stay," Gabe said. "You're hoping I'll find him before he finds you." "I'm letting you stay because you needed a room," Victoria corrected him. "I'm telling you about Pharaoh because—" She hesitated. "Because when you looked at me downstairs, it was like you saw something worth seeing, and that doesn't happen much in my life anymore." Before Gabe could respond, Victoria wished him good night and closed the door, leaving him alone with thoughts that had nothing to do with bounties and everything to do with green eyes flecked with gold. The morning brought the smell of coffee and bacon drifting up the stairs. Gabe dressed quickly, checking his revolvers before tucking one into his holster and the other into his waistband at the small of his back. Old habits died hard, especially for a man who'd made a living from being prepared. Victoria was in the small kitchen behind the saloon, her hair loose around her shoulders as she worked at the stove. The morning light revealed copper highlights he hadn't noticed the day before, and Gabe found himself momentarily transfixed. "You planning to stand there all morning, or would you like some breakfast?" Victoria asked without turning around. "How'd you know I was here?" Gabe asked, stepping into the kitchen. "Your spurs." She glanced over her shoulder with a small smile. Not the best accessory for a man trying to move quietly. Gabe removed his hat, setting it on the table. "I'll keep that in mind." Breakfast was a simple but hearty affair: eggs, bacon, biscuits still warm from the oven. They ate in comfortable silence until Victoria finally spoke. "What's your plan for finding Pharaoh?" Gabe considered his response carefully. "Start asking questions around town. Someone's bound to have seen him, maybe know where he's staying. And when you find him, that depends on him." Gabe met her eyes. "The bounty says dead or alive." "I prefer alive. They pay more and I sleep better. But Pharaoh's reputation suggests he won't come quietly." Victoria nodded, her face solemn. "I should tell you his brother might be with him. Thomas Pharaoh. He's not on any wanted posters, but he's just as dangerous." "2 pharaohs," Gabe murmured. "That complicates things." "Life has a way of doing that," Victoria said. She hesitated, then added, "I'll help you. I know this town, the people, they talk to me." Gabe shook his head. Too dangerous. If the pharaohs realize you're helping me, they already want me dead, Mr. Tucker. I don't think I can be in much more danger than I already am. Her green eyes flashed with determination. Besides, you'll find them faster with my help. Gabe, he said abruptly. What? My name? Call me Gabe, not Mr. Tucker. He stood, reaching for his hat. If we're going to be partners in this, even temporarily, we might as well use first names. Victoria's smile transformed her face, erasing the worry lines that had formed during their conversation. All right then, Gabe. Let's go find the men who want to kill me. The next 3 days established a pattern. During daylight hours, they would separate Gabe visiting the less reputable establishments in town, Victoria gathering information from merchants and respectable citizens. In the evenings, they would compare notes over dinner in the kitchen before Victoria opened the saloon for business. On the third night, as Victoria prepared to head downstairs, Gabe caught her arm gently. The contact sent that same unexpected jolt through him as when their fingers had touched across the bar. I think they're watching the saloon, he said quietly. A man's been across the street most of the day. Same spot, different hats, trying to look like different people. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. Thomas, he always was the careful one. You need to be careful tonight. Don't go outside for any reason. Gabe released her arm reluctantly. I'll be downstairs, keeping an eye out. You think they'll make a move tonight? I think they're getting impatient. They've been in town at least a week, based on what we've heard. That's a long time for wanted men to stay in one place. Victoria nodded, her hand unconsciously moving to the scar at her throat. Gabe had learned the story behind it during their conversations, Jacob Farrow's parting gift before she escaped during the bank robbery, a warning of what would happen if she testified. I never thought I'd say this, Victoria admitted, but I'm glad there's a bounty hunter in my saloon tonight. As the evening wore on, Gabe positioned himself at a corner table with a clear view of both the front door and the back entrance. He nursed a single whiskey, maintaining the appearance of a man enjoying a quiet drink while remaining utterly alert. The usual evening crowd had gathered: card players, ranch hands, a few travelers passing through. The piano player pounded out lively tunes, occasionally accompanied by one of the saloon girls singing. Victoria moved through it all with practiced ease, though Gabe could see the tension in her shoulders. Just past 10 o'clock, the front doors swung open and 2 men entered. The first was tall and lean, with cold eyes and the distinctive scar across his nose that Gabe recognized from the wanted poster, Jacob Farrow. The second was shorter but broader, with a similar cast to his features that marked him as Thomas, the brother. They paused just inside the entrance, scanning the room. Jacob's eyes fixed on Victoria behind the bar, a predatory smile spreading across his face. Thomas's gaze, however, swept the room more carefully, eventually settling on Gabe in the corner. Gabe saw the moment of recognition in Thomas's eyes. He leaned toward his brother, murmuring something. Jacob's focus snapped from Victoria to Gabe, his expression darkening. The Farrow brothers moved to the bar, positioning themselves directly in front of Victoria. Gabe tensed, his hand dropping to his holster beneath the table. Well, Jacob drawled loudly enough for his voice to carry over the piano music. If it isn't Miss Emily Wilson, the bank teller from Austin, fancy meeting you here. The piano player faltered and conversations around the saloon quieted. Victoria's face remained impressively composed. I'm afraid you're mistaken, she said evenly. My name is Victoria Hayes. What can I get you gentlemen to drink? Jacob laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Oh, you can get us a lot of things, Emily, starting with the 3 years of my life you stole with your lies. Thomas placed a restraining hand on his brother's arm. Now's not the time, Jake. Oh, I think it's exactly the time. Jacob leaned across the bar. You look different with your hair that color, but I'd never forget the woman who sent me to hell. Gabe stood slowly, his movement drawing all eyes in the saloon. The lady asked what you'd like to drink, he said, his voice carrying easily across the suddenly silent room. I suggest you answer her question or leave. Jacob turned, his hand hovering near his gun. This doesn't concern you, stranger. Actually, it does. Gabe stepped away from his table, moving into the open space. Jacob Farrow, you're wanted in 4 territories. There's a $500 bounty on your head. A murmur ran through the saloon as patrons began edging toward the exits. No one wanted to be caught in the impending crossfire. Thomas Farrow moved slightly to the side, creating distance between himself and his brother, a gunfighter's instinct. Tucker, Jacob spat. I heard you might be in these parts. 2 birds with 1 stone, eh? Kill the woman who testified against me and the bounty hunter on my trail. You're not killing anyone tonight, Gabe said calmly. You can come with me peacefully, or you can leave this saloon in a pine box. Your choice. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Jacob's hand flashed toward his gun. Gabe drew in one fluid motion, but before either man could fire, the deafening boom of Victoria's shotgun filled the saloon. The blast caught Jacob in the shoulder, spinning him backward against the bar. Thomas reached for his own weapon, but Gabe was faster. His bullet struck Thomas's right arm, causing his gun to clatter to the floor. Don't, Gabe warned as Thomas eyed his fallen weapon. Next one won't be so merciful. Within minutes, Sheriff Mills and his deputies had arrived, summoned by the gunfire. Jacob Farrow cursed through gritted teeth as the doctor was called to tend to his shoulder before transport to the jail. You've got a knack for trouble, Tucker, Sheriff Mills observed as the Farrow brothers were led away. But I can't argue with the results. The reward money will be available once I telegraph confirmation of their capture. After the sheriff departed, Gabe turned to find Victoria standing behind the bar, the shotgun still in her hands. The remaining patrons had fled during the commotion, leaving them alone in the saloon. Are you all right? Gabe asked, approaching slowly. Victoria carefully set the shotgun down. I've been waiting 3 years to do that, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I thought I'd feel different afterward. How do you feel? Tired, relieved. She looked up at him. Uncertain. Gabe nodded, understanding perfectly. The uncertain part gets easier with time. Victoria came around the bar, stopping directly in front of him. They'll go to prison this time, both of them. Yes. And you'll collect your bounty, that's the job. Victoria studied his face. And then what? On to the next wanted man in some other town. The question hung between them, heavy with implications. For the first time in years, Gabe found himself considering a different answer than the one he'd always given. I don't know, he admitted. Lately, I've been thinking there might be more to life than tracking men across territories. Like what? Victoria's voice had softened, her eyes searching his. Like maybe finding a place to stop running, a place where scars can heal instead of just accumulating. Gabe reached up hesitantly, his fingers gently tracing the thin scar at Victoria's throat. A place where the past is just that, the past. Victoria leaned into his touch. Red Bluff's not much of a town, but it has potential. I've noticed. They stood there in the empty saloon, the weight of unspoken possibilities surrounding them. Finally, Victoria smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile that reached her eyes. Help me clean up, she asked. We can talk about that and then what over a drink? Dawn found them still talking at a corner table, empty glasses and shared stories between them. Victoria told him about her life before Austin, her childhood on a small farm in East Texas, losing her parents to fever, making her way alone. Gabe shared tales of his own journey, the family he'd lost to raiders as a young man, his years as a cavalry scout during the war, the first bounty he'd tracked as a way to bring some justice to a lawless land. Each story was a piece of themselves offered up, each scar explained and understood. By the time sunlight streamed through the windows, something fundamental had shifted between them. "I should open up," Victoria said reluctantly, looking at the clock. "Morning regulars will be here soon." Gabe nodded, though neither made a move to stand. "I need to see the sheriff about the reward money." "Will you be coming back?" The question was simple, but the answer would define everything that followed. Gabe reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The scar on the back of her hand felt smooth beneath his thumb as he traced it gently. "If I'm welcome," he said. Victoria turned her hand to intertwine her fingers with his. "You are more than welcome." 2 weeks later, Gabriel Tucker collected the last bounty of his career. Standing outside the sheriff's office with the money secured in his pocket, he looked down the dusty main street of Red Bluff toward Maginty's Saloon, though most people in town had already started calling it Victoria's. He walked unhurriedly, nodding to townspeople he now recognized. For the first time in years, his guns weren't his most immediate concern. Instead, he found himself thinking about the conversation he'd had with Victoria that morning over breakfast. "You could be my partner," she'd suggested. "In the business, I mean. The saloon could use a man who knows how to keep trouble at bay without causing more of it." "Is that all you're offering? A business partnership?" Gabe had asked, half teasing. Victoria's blush had been answer enough, though she'd recovered quickly. "One step at a time, Mr. Tucker. I'm a respectable businesswoman now." As he approached the saloon, Gabe noticed Victoria through the window, arranging fresh wildflowers on the bar, a touch of beauty she'd begun adding since the pharaohs had been taken away. She looked up as if sensing his presence, her face brightening in a way that made his heart beat faster. Pushing through the doors, Gabe removed his hat as he entered. "Miss Hayes," he greeted formally, aware of the few morning customers nursing coffees at the tables. "Mr. Tucker," she returned with equal formality, though her eyes danced with private amusement. "I trust your business with the sheriff concluded satisfactorily." Gabe approached the bar, reaching into his pocket to produce the money. He placed it on the counter between them. "Consider it my investment," he said quietly. "In our partnership." Victoria's eyes widened. "Gabe, that's your bounty money. You earned it. And I'm choosing to invest it in Red Bluff, in this saloon." He paused, gathering courage for words that once would have seemed impossible. "In us." The last two words hung in the air between them, a declaration and a question all at once. Victoria reached across the bar, her hand covering his, scars meeting scars. "In that case," she said softly, "I accept your investment, all of it." 1 year later, on a crisp autumn day, Victoria and Gabe stood before the small white church in Red Bluff, exchanging vows that formalized what their hearts had known since that first moment in the saloon. Victoria wore a simple cream-colored dress, her auburn hair adorned with wildflowers. Gabe, almost unrecognizable in his new suit, had never looked at her with more wonder than when she walked down the aisle toward him. Maginty's Saloon had been transformed under their partnership. Now known officially as Hayes and Tucker's, it had become a respectable establishment where travelers could find good food, clean rooms, and fair dealings. Victoria handled the books and hospitality. Gabe managed security and supply runs. Together, they had created something neither had thought possible: a home. That evening, as they stood on the small balcony outside their room above the saloon, Gabe traced the scar at Victoria's throat with gentle fingers. "You ever think about how strange life is?" he asked. "All those years running, All those wounds collected, and they were just leading me to that moment when I walked through those doors and saw your eyes." Victoria leaned into him, her head resting against his chest. "Every scar tells a story," she murmured. "Ours finally makes sense together." Below them, Red Bluff continued its evening rhythms, piano music drifting from their saloon, horses clopping down the street, the distant whistle of the evening train. Just an ordinary Texas town, unremarkable to most who pass through. But to Gabriel and Victoria Tucker, it was everything, the place where two scarred souls had found each other, where the past had finally released its grip, and where every mark they carried had at last revealed its purpose: to bring them here, together, home.